Hey everybody, it's Luca from Rackets and Runners. So last month when I first tested the Honolulu Pickleball J2NF and J2FC Plus, I did a sort of first impressions video where I went over the specs, kind of went over the technology and all that, but also focused a lot on the playing footage from my first session with those paddles. And you guys seem to like that video a lot, so I figured why not do it with the brand new Boomstik as well, which obviously has been getting a lot of hype, and I've played with it once now. And the hype is definitely justified. So we're gonna do another video like that today. Don't worry, there's gonna be a full-on review as well coming as soon as possible. I'll try to play with it 3 or 4 more times before I get that done. But yeah, super exciting paddle. It's unlike anything I've ever tried really before. So we're gonna go over some of the specs and technology going on in the paddle. And then I'm gonna run through the footage. Kind of talking about power, spin, feel, you know, the usual stuff that we talk about on this channel, but more with the footage supplementing my explanation. If you guys like this style of video, I'm definitely going to keep making them. Just let me know in the comment section. I got a lot of support on this video last time, so really excited to keep doing these. And of course, I also want to remind you that any of the paddles we talk about on this channel, you can check out on our website, racketsandrunners.ca. Now, unfortunately, the Boomstik is already sold out. We'll be getting more very soon. I'll probably time the full review with when we restock. But yeah, now I'm gonna go over the technology and specs because there is a lot to talk about here. Oh, and yes, we are changing the background. I'm still trying to figure out the lighting and all that, but no more gray background, so that'll be exciting. Okay, so I'm gonna use Selkirk's website for this because it's pretty interesting. They got a lot of marketing material here. The first thing I want to go over is actually the specs. So the one I tested is obviously the elongated one. You guys know me, I tend to prefer elongated paddles. Weight between 8 and 8.3 ounces, grip length 5.8 inches, so quite a long handle for an elongated paddle. Obviously 5.5 is kind of the standard. And yeah, this isn't the standard Invicta shape from Selkirk. It is a much longer handle. It's like the SLK era Power, which to be honest, I prefer quite a bit more to the Invicta, and we'll talk about that a little bit more with maneuverability, hand speed, and even just ground strokes in general. So yeah, super nice handle length. Obviously, really easy to put 2 hands on this paddle. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. Okay, the grip circumference is 4.25. The average swing weight is 118, which I know is pushing a little bit high, but you still got some room to customize. And the other thing is, obviously, you've got this tungsten on the sides of the paddle, so you don't really need to add weight up high. And 118 still allows you, some room to put weight down here if you want it. Now, the twist weight being 7.2 is pretty high. Not a ton of room to play around with customization there. And this is a fairly light paddle at 8 to 8.3 ounces. Some people like to push it to that 8.5. So just keep that in mind. It does have quite a high twist weight. Now, paddle length, 16.5 inches, paddle width, 7.45. The face material is T700 carbon fiber, 3 layers. Pretty standard stuff. There is Infinigrit on here, like there is on the new Lux Control Air Infinigrit. Core material is the Boom Core. We'll talk a lot more about that in a second here. And then they kind of give things like sweet spot size, power, control, spin, and I guess sweet spot again. Numbers match, which is good. Now I just want to talk about this core because it's really interesting. So yeah, these are the specs. I'll keep them up there. Well, you know what? No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm actually just gonna make that bigger. This is the Boom Core. So obviously full foam, as you can see right there. Our most powerful foam core system ever. Not surprising. Again, Selkirk has been very control oriented for most of their time in pickleball. And then what's really interesting is there's an EVA power ring. So honestly, it's a very similar core system to the J2FC Plus there. I mean, there's basically the same, EVA foam, power ring, whatever you want to call it on the sides, and then full foam core. So these are manufactured very similarly. Feel very different on court though. But yeah, obviously the marketing here is very power oriented. So it's obviously going to be a powerful paddle. The other thing here is obviously the 3 layers of T700 carbon fiber. And what you don't see here is the Infinigrit, which obviously they spray on, and works really well. I mean, this is a really gritty paddle. It's more of like a fine grit. I don't know if all of you have experienced Infinigrit, but it's a little bit finer. Oh yeah, I do just quickly want to talk about this Moy tuning system here. I don't know what material it is. I feel like it's probably tungsten, but you have these little weights. I thought they were going to be movable. They're not. They're stuck there. But yeah, at around, I don't know, 10 and 2, you got that weight there. It's 7.5 grams. 7.5 grams, that's a lot. Yeah, obviously it's there to help stabilize the paddle, give it a little bit more plow through, a little bit more consistency and all that. But we will talk about that. But yeah, that's the marketing, the tech specs. You know, very, very exciting stuff. It does seem like a very well-researched paddle. So now let's move on to the playing footage. Okay, so last time this was a 20-minute video. Since it's a first impressions, I kind of want to make it a little bit shorter. So I have fewer clips, but I still have the same kind of thing here where we're going to talk about feel, power, hand speed, sweet spot, control, and then we'll finish up with spin. But the first thing I want to talk about is feel. And honestly, I don't really need footage for this, but I will talk over the footage so that you guys can enjoy it. This is one of the most unique feeling paddles I've ever tested. It's almost like a combination of a Gen 3 and a Gen 4, where you have that foam, kind of plusher, slightly more muted element, but then you also have that hollow element of the Gen 3 where it really feels like the ball is going deep into the paddle and then springing out with a ton of power. And you know, I'm still not perfectly there with describing the feel of this paddle, which is why I wanted to do this first impressions before I do the full review, because I do think I need to test it against some other Gen 4s and some other Gen 3s. But I would say the most outstanding feel characteristic with this paddle is that it is incredibly responsive. You know, it took me a little bit of time to get used to this feel profile, and I did, you know, screw up a couple shots here. I don't know if I have one here. Yeah, like this shot. This is a good example. Great volley, and then here I kind of just, you know, that went in, but barely. And then this is just me whacking the ball at the paddle, and I was really testing the limits. Like, you can see I'm smiling here. I'm like, what is this paddle? Just flicking the ball at it, and it responds incredibly well to your input. So that's the most impressive thing I would say with this whole feel experience is the responsiveness of the paddle. And that applies for power, that applies for spin, and to a certain extent it applies for control. Again, we'll talk about that later. But now I want to move on to power because power is unbelievable here. If you hear me, if we raise the volume here on this clip, it's pretty funny. I don't know if you heard, but I say that's a tennis racket. And the difference between this and Gen 3s, and to be honest, again, I think I might prefer Gen 3s, but this is more responsive. There's a shorter dwell time here, and I'd always kind of thought Gen 3s were the closest thing we could get to a tennis racket, but I actually think those, because they're a little bit softer, because the ball spends more time in there, you can actually shape it more than a tennis racket. It's actually less responsive. This really feels like a tennis racket, where what you put in comes out, and it comes out very quickly. This, you know, was just an example of the amount of power. I mean, we could, you know, join in spin here if you want, but this ball comes off at a crazy velocity. So when you're swinging full, when you're going for big shots, it's really unlike anything I've ever tested. And I mean, this ball here, like, this is just crazy power. Like you can see here, I haven't created the craziest angle. It's probably like 3 feet from the sideline. And yet it's just so powerful that he still doesn't have enough time to react. The one thing I will say is you need to have confidence in this paddle. This is a really good example of what I'm talking about. This was the beginning, within the first 5 or 10 minutes of me using this paddle, and I think I slowed down my stroke. Yeah, you can see when I pull up a little bit here, that's because I'm trying to like rotate my hips a little bit more, slow down my paddle head speed, and just like guide the ball in, and I send it long. I mean, obviously, you know, not the paddle's fault, definitely mine, but with a paddle that has a longer kind of plusher dwell time, I would feel the ball a little bit more here and be able to shape it with like slower spin. This paddle, because it's so responsive and so poppy and so powerful, you don't really have that time to slow down your stroke, or at least I haven't found that perfect middle ground. It's not as easy to do it with this paddle. And this was where I was like, okay, so it's not gonna allow you to be as soft with your ground strokes. This is really something you want to accelerate quickly all the time. And when you do, when you trust it, when you generate the necessary paddle head speed, I can almost promise you the ball will go in. That's what's crazy about this paddle, is that it has so much spin, and we'll talk more about that spin later, but it has so much spin that if you generate the paddle head speed with the right technique, you will keep the ball in the court. Unfortunately, I don't really have any clips for Pop, but Pop is arguably more impressive than Power. Now, I have just spent 10 minutes talking about how incredible the power is here, but part of the reason it's so responsive, like I keep saying, is because that pop is so good, where like the ball is just so quickly in and out of the paddle face, but there's still a spring effect where it's just like, especially compared to Gen 4 paddles like the True Foams, like the J2 FC Plus, even like the J2NF, there's much more pop here, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying about how there's that hollowness of a Gen 3 combined with the feel profile of a Gen 4. So I do just quickly want to bounce a ball on this paddle, and then I'll bounce it on the J2 FC Plus to kind of compare, because I actually think the sound is really important to explain that whole feel profile. I'll do the J. That sounds much more standard. This has that hollowness. It's got that Gen 3 hollowness to it. It's like a combination of Gen 4 power with Gen 3 power. It's, yeah, really quite phenomenal. All right, now let's talk about hand speed, because this is where I think switching away from the Invicta shape, which came down, you know, significantly lower, probably down to like here or something. This has way more handle and way less paddle face. So you can see, first of all, putting two hands on this, super easy, one of the easiest paddles to do that with. But the big thing is that there's less paddle face, so it's a little bit more aerodynamic, which helps many things. And we're just gonna play the clips here. So a few things here. One, easy to put two hands on for a backhand, pick it up, move it, and it's really easy to, you know, that pivot point is really easy to find. With the Invicta, you know, it was kind of harder to pivot because the paddle face came down lower. This, you just kind of flick at the ball, and it's so easy to do. So you get a lot of paddle head speed despite the swing weight being fairly high. And then just responsive here, you know, can hit a nice volley. And then this motion, you know, flicking the ball at the kitchen up there is really easy as well. This is another thing I want to talk about, because this is not something I do very well at all. You see this? I have a terrible two-handed backhand, okay? So here, okay, we're back to the two hands on the paddle. I mean, this is, you've almost got the space you have on a tennis racket here, which is crazy. But the more impressive thing about this clip is how I drop it back because it's so maneuverable. And then here, I can pronate it so much that I can drop backhand this. And like, okay, obviously I don't win this point because my opponent just hits a beautiful touch volley here. I mean, obviously I could have dropped this closer to the net, but this is already such a difficult shot for me that I was proud of this shot. He hits a great shot. But this motion right here, this little flick with the backhand, because your two hands are more free and because there's less paddle, you can just do this brushing motion so easily. So I am a huge fan of this shape. Now the one, I guess, problem you would foresee with this shape is that less paddle face surface area means less sweet spot. So is the sweet spot small on this paddle? Well, we got a section dedicated to that. And the answer is no, absolutely not. This is the biggest sweet spot I've ever felt on a pickleball paddle. It's so funny because obviously this perimeter weighting system probably has something to do with it. You know, raising the twist weight will expand your sweet spot this way. But I think this core is honestly just magical. And the reason I say that is because whether you make contact here, 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 wherever you make contact, you still get the feel of a boomstick. And it's funny because I compare it to a paddle like the J2 FC Plus, which I thought had a huge sweet spot. You still feel a major difference between contact in the middle and contact on the sides of this paddle. You don't really feel a major difference with contact on the sides of this paddle, and these clips are gonna show, because I think this one, that's the perfect clip. That's the perfect clip because, again, I mean, backhands I've never hit, but this right here, I remember this contact point was much higher up the paddle face than I wanted it to be. I think I hit the ball like here or something, and I still hit a perfect shot. Well, I lose the point, so it's not perfect. But, you know, perfect for my standards as a backhand. I caught the ball too high, and because I had that feel and that playability maintained, so it still had power, it still had spin, I was able to drop it you know, this is almost identical to the point where that I lost there against Simon in the other clip. But this is just, it's insane. Maintaining this level of playability significantly outside the sweet spot, because I think I made contact probably right around here. I still had great feel for the ball, and that allowed me to generate the power and the spin that you would get in the sweet spot on this boomstick. And you know what? This is true of everywhere on this paddle face. And it got to a point where I was just so blown away with how big the sweet spot was that I think this is the clip. Boom, here. That's a miss hit. That is a miss hit. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. No, my body's covering it. I think I hit the ball like here in the paddle. And it's still, like, it's not the most powerful ball, and you can tell like it's come off a little bit awkwardly, but it's still a deadly shot. And I get a little bit lucky that it lands in, but it still has insane power and spin. The impressive thing is obviously the shot comes off well, but even in my hand, it felt good. Like I still had that boomstick feel from hitting the ball here, which is just crazy. I mean, no paddle's ever done that. There are paddles with big sweet spots now, but there are no paddles that maintain their feel and playability this well outside the sweet spot. Okay, so I want to talk about spin just quickly before I talk about control, because obviously I've talked about how spin friendly it is on big ground strokes, and honestly I think it's probably the most spin friendly paddle I've ever tested in terms of trusting the paddle, swinging huge, and just like whacking it at the ball. But there are a couple things that I want to know. Like, okay, this is a perfect example. You're going to see it goes way far. And, you know, my technique wasn't perfect here, but this is a ball that's come fairly into the court. I want to go offensive here. I don't want to just put it back because he's kind of messed up the return. I want to take advantage of that. And the ball's super low, so what I have to do is get underneath it, brush up, and really try to shape it. And, you know, you would think that scooping motion would be enough, but this is an example of what I mean by it's super responsive. You see how high it launches here? That's because I'm trying to scoop the ball, so I kind of have to come, you know, like up and over it like that. But this doesn't allow you to scoop the ball in the same way that a really soft paddle does, or a broken in Gen 3 does, which kind of acts like a soft paddle. This is responsive, so it'll kind of shoot out at the same angle that you make contact with the ball with. So this was early on in the games. I learned that I can't really do this. And from then on, I realized the scooping technique, not quite as easy with this paddle. So for soft spin, a little bit harder to just generate easy shape. But if you tilt, so, you know, instead of this, you tilt your paddle like this and just trust that it's going to hold on to it and shape it. That's where you can generate tons of spin. And I think this is a good example of that. One of these last clips here. Yeah, I mean, my paddle face is tilted a little bit more, you know, a little bit more, I mean, it's pretty horizontal, but a little bit more like this, and I just trust it, shape it, and there you go. You just have to trust the paddle, but it's not a scoopy paddle. It's not as scoopy of a paddle. And here I was just like, yeah, you have to go for big motions, big, fast swings with it, and I brush up a ton, and there, you know, I mean, this is a ton. This is a ton of spin. So the spin potential is there. It's just that the slow, scoopy spin isn't there in the same way. Now let's just finish up with control, because obviously this is a power paddle. It's, like I said, springy, responsive, tons of pop, tons of power, but it has a really big sweet spot. So the sweet spot is on its side for control. It's not a control paddle. It's not a control paddle. Now, what I will say is, because it has such a big forgiving sweet spot, and because it is so consistent, that's a big thing. It is very consistent. It is a little bit like Gen 2's, that responsiveness I keep talking about. It never really surprises you once you understand it. In the kitchen for dinking, I had no issues with it. No issues. I mean, this is a couple dinks here. One dink, two dink. Very, very easy to dink with. Where it is an issue is from slightly farther away than the kitchen, so and when you're in a more scrambly mindset. So here I don't trust it. Here I just don't trust it for drops quite yet. So, and I missed a drop there, and I was annoyed here. I was annoyed because I could have gone for a two-handed backhand. I know it probably would have been a better shot because I missed. And the reason it's not great for drops and resets is because, one, the dwell time isn't very long, even on touch shots. You don't feel the ball sink into the paddle face for as long as you'd want. So yeah, very poppy and very quick exit point. So if you're not, if you're not dialed into the paddle, which obviously this was my first session with it, I'm not super dialed into it, you are gonna be kind of playing a game of roulette where it's like, you just don't have the time to feel the ball in the paddle face to then kind of guide it in and kind of have that more forgiving element to the touch game. So there is an element of difficulty there, even though it is, responsive, stable, and very consistent. It's a difficult paddle because the dwell time is short, because it's poppy and springy. So yeah, this is a telltale sign. This is a very Luca thing to do. Look at the paddle when you've missed something, but I was a little bit annoyed here. I was like, okay, I just want to feel that ball a little bit. If you're gonna be this powerful, if you're gonna be this poppy, I want that dwell time, which is what Broken and Gen 3s do so well. Even the SLK era Power does so well. It has that feel, that longer feel to help you in the soft game, and this doesn't really have that. It is a faster exit point, as they say. So yeah, that is about it with the first impressions, which are gonna end up being way too long, of the brand new Project Boomstick from Selkirk. Really super, super fascinating paddle to me. It's so different to everything else I've tried that I am really struggling. I think I'm gonna struggle a lot with this review, especially to describe that feel profile because it is so different. So yeah, a real pleasure playtesting it. I think, people are gonna love this paddle. Again, I do wanna try to figure out the control game a little bit more. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this first impressions review. I'll have the full review up, hopefully in the next week or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. And remember, if you do want to check out any of these paddles, you can visit us online at racketsandrunners.ca.